Hi everybody, this is Tom Chariams with another Amiga related video. And this one actually talks about the lineage of a program that a lot of us know as Amiga GraphiCraft. But it was also known as ProPaint during development, and a version of ProPaint actually would go on to become Aegis Images. This is rather interesting from a historical perspective because the programs GraphiCraft and Paint and ProPaint were two completely different programs written ultimately by two different sets of people, but both using the same functional specification as a starting point. And thus you'll see programs that are very similar, but that diverge in some rather interesting ways that haven't been fully documented. GraphiCraft was intended to be the graphics program that would be bundled with every single Amiga computer, and was originally commissioned by Amiga to Island Graphics, who were the people behind the popular Koala Painter and Micro Illustrator packages, so they had a considerable expertise in writing graphics and illustration packages. However, because of scheduling constraints and things that had to be dealt with, they felt that the programs weren't being completed quickly enough in time. So what wound up happening was R.J. Mical took the GraphiCraft specification that was made in the manual and made his own version, which was distributed as Commodore Amiga GraphiCraft, while Island Images would ultimately license ProPaint, the version that they were working on, as Aegis Images. So in a nutshell, that's the lineage here. But this particular video is actually going to go through the process of showing first the beta version of GraphiCraft, which also went under the name ProPaint at the Amiga launch event, as you can see right here in the picture with Andy Warhol and Debbie Harry. And we're actually going to go through the process of recreating this process that they used to create these images here. And I'm going to show the process of how this worked in the various versions of GraphiCraft, ProPaint, and Aegis Images here. And basically just going to take and show the various differences between the programs and just have a small analysis of the feel of these different programs here for a historical context. So with that, let's get started. To do this, I will be using my WinUAE emulator, and for the beta version of GraphiCraft, it requires the beta version of Amiga-DOS and the Amiga operating system libraries that were dated 27.3. This puts this particular build squarely at the first part of July of 1985, just before the launch event. At this point here, the workbench still was not included on this particular build of the disk, so you can't do that. There's no workbench. So everything has to be loaded from the CLI. And we'll do this by basically launching GraphiCraft here in this fashion. And apologies, I didn't turn on the floppy disk noise here, so yep, it's just inching right along. Give it a moment. This is the beta version of GraphiCraft here, and you'll see something that would pop up in other versions of the software in different guises here. This is the select menu. Aegis will eventually show this as the fast menu, giving a list of common colors here that you can select very quickly, common patterns that you can also select very quickly, but also common tools very quickly here. Now, a telltale sign that this is the Island version of the software here is this little dog ear here at the end when you take and select a pattern. This is a very common thing that you saw in Micro Illustrator and in Koala Paint, and you don't really see it in the implementation of GraphiCraft that was ultimately released by Commodore. Now, to do our little demonstration here, I'm actually going to take and open up painting on the disk here, which is a frame grab of my face here, brought in, and it's going to use the first 8 colors in the palette and produce a nice evenly spread color palette that we can use here to do some serious drawing. Cool, huh? Well, okay. Let's do what they did. The interesting thing about the beta version of the flood fill here is that it is a stack-based flood fill. It doesn't use the fill routines that are in the operating system ROMs here, and we'll see that makes a big difference when we take and move over to both GraphiCraft version 1.0 and Aegis Images. But let's go ahead and start picking some colors here. I'm going to use a nice little flesh color here for my main skin here. All good, looking good so far. Maybe that too. And I'm going to pick a color for my energy dome. Let's use the main blue here. Put that. And then I'll use sea blue green here for the main reflection here. We'll keep the white there as it is. Sure, that's no problem. And now I'm going to take and pick, I'm going to go for like an orange t-shirt. Sure, why not? Oh, it leaked in and painted this too, but that's a happy little accident here. We like happy little accidents. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to do that here as well. Okay. So we've got our happy little accidents there. And I'm going to take and pick a darker shade here for contrast of the orange. The bottom part of the shirt. Okay, looking good so far. And maybe, I don't know. Do we want to take and do, maybe I'll do this. And maybe I'll use this for my maybe, who knows. Okay. So there we go. We've got a nice little picture here. Let's give it a background that really pops. Boom. Here. A little bit of this here. Okay. Looking good so far. I can take this out of the way here and we can see the final image. Now, because of the way I had to take and convert this, one of the things about this version of GraphiCraft is that this particular version of GraphiCraft needs a file format that is entirely contiguous bitmaps. The closest match to this is the Commodore ACBM format. It basically just puts the bit planes one right after the other sequentially in memory, and then puts the color color map after that. So we'll go ahead. I'm going to save this. And even at this particular point in time, you'll see that we have a fairly full set of options here, including geometric functions. And we can go into options, for example. Or not. Usually this works. Come on. Are you not going to do it? Guess not. Let me see what happens here. Options. Nope. Options menu here. Normally this is a case of the beta nature of the program here, but this would allow you to take and set various options that you would want to be able to set, such as connecting shapes together, that sort of thing. Oddly enough, we seem to have completely crashed. Well, boom, it just, we're not doing. So let me see if I can get something to happen. Nope, program has completely fallen into into kablooey stand. So I will take and reset. And we will take and load again. I'll take and pause and then bring back in once I have everything reloaded. Okay, as luck would have it, I had to rebuild the whole painting because it didn't save right. But, you know, beta software. Gotta love it. So, let's say we have these, you have these various shapes here. And of course you can select the shapes from the menus, and some have sub-menus such as showing how many sides you want to put on a particular shape. But some of the unique things that were added to even GraphiCraft by Island at this stage were the ability to do shapes with connected sides, such as being able to cycle between doing 1 cycles, 2 cycles, that sort of thing. So let's say we want to take and pick an option here. We want this shape to connect together. We want it to be filled, and we'll go ahead and lock this into place so that we'll keep these options the next time we select this particular tool. And I'm going to go into Cycle Draw, and I'm going to use the Cycle Draw tool here to cycle between these 3 colors when I take and select. You'll notice there's no OK here. I have to click outside of. This is kind of weird, but I have to right click and pull out. But once I do, I can, for example, let me try to do this here. Boop. Boop. And you can see I'm basically doing connected shape type work. Let me undo that, and I'll try that one more time. Come on. There we go. There we go. Boop. So it became really easy to take and do connected shapes and the like. Just very, very effortless. And even with shapes like the triangle here, you have the same give to, take to cycle, so that you can, if you take and do, you can do mesh-like things. So connected triangles, that sort of thing. And so on. Try that one more time, and I'm going to check. It may be the different set. Let me see. So that's 1 fixed, 2 fixed. Let's try that one more time. So that's cycle. Let's try 1 fixed, 2 fixed. See if that, okay. There we go. So you can do mesh-like type things. And so on. I mean, it really was, I mean, I can't really explain all that much. The Amiga was a modern art graphics machine, and it made doing this type of stuff really effortless. Let's see if I can save this and not blow itself up here. So there we go. I mean, this is the essence of the beta version of GraphiCraft here. There were a lot of different tools so that you could do things like being able to magnify. These are things that we'll see in other versions of the software here, so you can do up close, detailed oriented work. There is the ability to do mirror draws, to be able to do color cycling. So you can take and pick particular cycles of colors, sure, no problem, and animate them. Turn that off. Go. No. Oh my God. Ah. And so on. But even at this particular stage here, you can see this was the version of the software that was used at the Amiga launch event. And this piece of software would be heavily debugged and show window, hide window. These don't work. These would be highly debugged and turned into both GraphiCraft by Commodore and Aegis Images by Aegis. So with that, we'll take and go into the next bit, and we will launch into GraphiCraft. I think, yep, I'm done here. Kaboof. We're just done, and I'm gonna have to parachute out. But the next, we'll actually switch over to my Amiga 1000 setup here, which has version 1.1 of the Kickstart here with 1.1 of Workbench. And we will boot into our Workbench environment. What a difference just a few months makes. Now we have a Workbench, we have our graphical user interface, and I'm going to switch out a copy of Aegis here. With a copy of GraphiCraft. This is GraphiCraft version 1.0 as it was released at the tail end of 1985. This was not ultimately packaged with every Amiga as originally intended. God only knows why it should have been. But immediately we'll see some similarities, but we'll also see, wow, some things have really been cut down. The brushes are here. Michi's paw print is here. That's interesting. That's a nice little touch. But you'll see that all the shapes are gone except for the rectangle on the line. And we have free draw and we have fill and we've got text. Our color palette is ever so slightly different, but the requester is mostly the same. The main difference here is that now, instead of dealing with hue, saturation, and luminance, we're now dealing entirely in the RGB color space only. We have cycle draw, we have cycle colors, we have magnify. I'm wondering if I can actually get away with doing this. Let's see. It's also worth noting that GraphiCraft cannot open the file that the beta version of GraphiCraft could open at all. Nor can it open up IFF versions of the ILBM versions of the image. It is completely and utterly its own little file format that is specific to GraphiCraft itself. All in all, straightforward and basic paint program, but one that with a decent amount of patience, you can do a lot of great things with it. And we can take, for example, let's say I will take and load boxes for sure. Why not? Nice little bit of modern art there. And this is using the cycle draw feature here to take and make these particular images. Color palette change. But you'll see that this particular program is definitely cut down from the version that you just saw that was also called GraphiCraft. They were written by two very different people. And in point of fact, if we actually take and go into the manuals themselves, and take a look at the manual for GraphiCraft. Where are you? Somewhere here. I just saw you. Hexcraft. There we go. We'll see that the colophon lists the credits for GraphiCraft as being developed by Robert J. Mical and Barry Walsh. We'll see the credits for who developed Aegis Images in just a moment. And in fact, let's actually go to that. But you can see here, yes, we have our GraphiCraft user manual. You can see the bits and pieces that are available here. So even though these programs were built from a common specification, they have diverging sets of features. GraphiCraft has fewer features as it was released. And the beta version that you saw would become ProPaint by the time of the launch, and ProPaint would wind up in the hands of Aegis, who published a number of pieces of software that were being initially developed for licensing by Commodore, but for whatever reason, they didn't go all the way through. So, wound up instead just licensing it to Aegis. What are some of the other programs? Well, the animation software would ultimately be called Aegis Animator, for example, written by Jim Kent over at Island Software. The business graphics software would be called Aegis Impact, and so on. But let's go ahead and go into Aegis Images, and we're going to see some familiarity again. An interesting thing here is that they've added a version of the software that runs in high resolution mode. That's the 640 pixel mode. So you can do 640 by 200 at 16 colors, or you can do 320 by 200 at 32 colors. We can see right here, down here, the fast menu has been reformatted here, but the tools and everything that we saw initially in the beta version of the software, and things start to look a bit familiar again. But what's this? Let's take a look at the About box here. And we see the three names of the people involved in writing this particular version. It was commissioned by Island Graphics, Commodore to Island Graphic Corporation. Mike Gomez, Robert Leyland, and Mathias Genser. So again, totally different set of people, but a very similar type of situation. So let's go ahead and change directory over to our DF1. And we'll go ahead and open paintings here too. So, okay, great. That's the bitplane version, sorry, wrong one. So let me open Tom 2, that should do it. The major change here with this version is that this version loads IFF ILBM. So this can trade data format compatibility with Deluxe Paint. So the images that are loaded in here can be loaded in Deluxe Paint and vice versa, because they use the same file format. And a few things got cleaned up and reformatted here. We can see that the color menus look a lot better now. The shape menus are a bit more spaced out. The brush menus are not just all glommed together. You can see everything as individual tools, and you can see where things begin and end. And once again, if we go back into the colors menu, we see the hue, luminance, and saturation that defined the beta version of GraphiCraft, but you also have the option here of being able to take and switch into RGB color palette modes here. And you see a few things that have been added, such as the ability to do faux transparency effects with a given range of colors, to use a certain set of colors to implement glow effects, and so on. You'll also see a whole set of effects that can be used to implement things like spreads, such as being able to implement fill gradients with and without dithering. You have pantograph, which is basically like a rubber stamp tool in Photoshop, and so on. Lots of interesting things were added. But even the same techniques that we did here that we did in the beta version of GraphiCraft also work here just fine. So I can go in and I can do the same tricks. But here's a major difference. The ROM flood fills are used here at full speed, so you'll see these happen pretty much instantly. Once it figures out where it goes, bam, there it goes. Boom, there it goes. The flood fills are faster, much more efficient. So to that, okay, great. Boom, boom, boom. So you can see all this happens very quickly. Of course, we have undo, so we can pull back and do things that we know we don't want to do. Okay, fine. Boom and boom. I'll take and use a slightly different set of colors here for this. Let's say, for example, I want to use you. And you'll see that the flood fill actually worked a little bit different this case, but that's cool. That's all right. We'll just take and use the light purple here as a side effect. Okay. Maybe we do that. And maybe the dome uses slightly different set. Here we go. And maybe, let's see. And maybe we do that. Yeah, all very good. You'll see the familiar shapes also return here with the same techniques. I'll use a slightly different method here and show the give to functionality here. That's part of both the rhombus and the triangle here, so that you can share sides to take and do mesh-like shapes very easily, very effectively. We'll take that, throw a little cycle draw on it. And then we shall options, just make sure we're filled. Okay, great. It just connects with the shape. Okay, that's cool. And so on. Boom. Okay. Modern art machine does a really great job here. And you can take and combine these particular tricks together to do very interesting things. Of course, we have, again, I showed the spread before, and we can actually take and let's see if I can do this over what we already have. I'll take and do vertical lines here. With the flood fill. No, one of the things you can do as part of your spread is to specify a dither parameter that you saw there before. And we'll just take and do this. Oops. Nope. No. Flood fill. Options. No repeat. Do a standard seed fill. Okay, great. Boom. Anytime you lock a particular set of settings, that means use those settings the next time you use that tool. Otherwise, it just throws them away. So, that is good. Okay, great. Fine. We're in flood fill. Color. Let's just, let's make sure our effects are set. Okay, great. So there we go. Boom. And it's going to do an initial flood fill test to make sure we can actually get it done. And then it will take and fill it out. There you go. So I mean, you know, I hope you guys can kind of see here. This is the rough lineage of these particular sets of programs here. Definitely it's definitely a most interesting lineage, how two programs could be built from the same common specification and yet diverge into two, either, depending on your point of view, slightly or very differently evolving programs here. I hope this has been historically informative, and as I always say, until next time, guys, have fun.